Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Um, just to introduce myself, I'm Jan Jeremias, and I have spent many years involved in health in one way or another. And for the past number of years, I've blended my clinical research roots with a long and like a longing love, passion for holistic wellness. I love to support both people and their pets in living longer, fuller lives. I find joy in helping others see the whole picture of their well-being physically, mentally, and emotionally, and turning that into a simple, meaningful blueprint for health. I'm deeply moved and sort of called to the creative side of work and life and by connection. And I'm so grateful to share that path with my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane McQueen, or MJ. We believe in bringing kindness into the world, one creative project, one breath, and one conversation at a time. And so, a heartfelt thank you to you, Mary Jane, and a big thank you to everyone who's here, either present here today or virtually, who watches us for showing up because you add so much to this community and it really exists because of you. And I will pass it to you, Mary Jane.
Thank you, Jan. It's like, hey, everyone. As most of you here know, but I will share for purpose of recording as always. I'm Mary Jane, or MJ, as Jan was mentioning, and I am really happy to be here as always with all of you. For those of you that don't know me, I am the founder of MJ McQueen Creative Studio, where I help heart-centered entrepreneurs really step into their light, find their voice, and share their gifts in a way that feels authentic to them. And I really enjoy the magic that we create here. And as always, I'm honored to be with you and my beautiful friend Jan, who inspires me every day with just her love and her support. And it's such a beautiful collaboration. And I love the way this community has been growing. And it feels like we're really weaving this amazing tapestry together. I can't get past that visual because it really does seem like that's who we are at our core, so that the vibrations are really of our creativity, love, and light are making this beautiful tapestry, as I mentioned. So I thank you truly for being part of Spirit Born Imaginings. Shall I share the poem, Jan?
Yes, perfect.
So this poem is called Endings and Tender New Beginnings. Shining brightly in the evening sky, the November moon drifts low, a lantern over fields stripped bare, a quiet guide through the dark of loss. It marks endings, fallen leaves, fading light, yet in its radiant glow, a promise. Watch, prepare, hold, hold fast for what waits beyond the darkness. Shadows stretch like memory, and the wind whispers of change, of absence, of silence, of hearts reshaped, a cycle turning from decay to renewal, from sorrow to hope. Under the moon's steady gaze, we find our balance. We gather the fragile threads of our tattered hearts and trust that with all endings come tender new beginnings.
Thank you, Mary Jane, for sharing our weekly poem. And welcome, everyone, to Winter's Whisper, the silent call of the Beaver Moon. Welcome, dear friends. It's such a joy to be together today. As we gather under the soft influence of the Beaver Moon, we invite you to take a comfortable seat, take a deep breath in, and gently exhale any of today's busyness. Feel yourself arriving, not just here in this space, but in this very moment. The Beaver Moon marks a sacred turning point. It's a supermoon, a time when nature begins to slow down, to prepare, to build what is needed before the stillness of winter fully arrives. Just as the beavers ready their lodgings for the cold months ahead, we too are invited to pause and tend to our inner sanctuaries, those quiet, unseen places within that long for warmth, reflection, and care. Today, we'll explore the spiritual, emotional, and psychological meanings woven into this time of year, a season that calls us inward, asking us to listen to our intuition and reconnect with what truly sustains us. The Beaver Moon reminds us that preparation and rest are acts of wisdom, not idleness. It's a time to gather emotional resources, to nurture relationships that provide comfort, and to honor the slower rhythms of the natural world. This gathering is about listening to the whispers of the earth, to the rhythm of our hearts, and to the still, soft call of the soul. It's an invitation to release what no longer serves us and to welcome the calm that comes from trusting the natural cycles of life. Whether you're seeking grounding or inspiration or simply a moment of quiet reflection, we welcome you with open hearts. And together we'll take time to breathe, to reflect, and to reconnect with the deep wisdom that winter's approach so beautifully brings. So, welcome, truly welcome to this circle of calm and connection. May today bring us all peace, clarity, and the gentle reminder that even in stillness, life continues to move, to renew, and to whisper its quiet truths.
I just well, especially in northern climes as we are, Jan, this is the season where we start to feel like we're um well, especially you were mentioning the cold earlier this morning. Um just this feeling of hibernation, but it's a coming back home into yourself. So I really love that. I believe that Beaver Moon, that term came from Native American culture, I believe, where they refer to, because they, of course, are very in tune with nature and the spiritual beings that reside within nature themselves. So it's just a wonderful sense of it's almost like coming home to yourself. That's the way it feels like. It's like coming home, taking that time to renew and rest.
Absolutely. And yes, I also think from what we read this week, it seems to stem from um, Native American culture and also the first settlers in this country, where, it was a time where they would actually, you know, beavers were very important for, commerce and warmth as far as pelts went. And so it was a time when they actually looked to sort of, you know, hunt or the beaver. And so it became a very sacred moon. And since the light changed, they were doing quite a bit of hunting at night. And so it became this sort of mark, as many people or many societies that go off of the lunar calendar versus going off of, other calendars became very aware of the phases of the moon. I do think it is interesting that, that they looked at this time, which it truly is, and I think historically was. And if we look to our roots, where we are supposed to come inside, seek warmth, go inside, internal, not only personally or individually, but also just within our families, to go home back to your roots or back to that sort of place where you came from. And I think that the beavers became a true symbol of this. And was really interesting as I was reading, and they were referring to one article talked about meditation as being this opportunity, and it's a really important time to meditate when there's a full moon, and they called it sacred hibernation. And I thought, oh, I love that. I'm going to go I'm going to go sacredly hibernate right now. I just thought like how fun. It just sounded so different and fun versus not that I mean, I love meditation, but it was just, just kind of a new way to think about it. Because it is a sacred practice, right? A sacred hibernation. So, Seamus, please.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks, Mary Jane. Thanks for the poem as well. And yeah, this is perfect time actually for me for a bit of work I've been doing, like personally, over the last probably 2 months or so, and reminds me of an article I found from Osho, like "Breath is the bridge." Well, it must be earlier on the year, maybe a year or so ago, and he talked about effort. Effort gets in the way, striving gets in the way of our ability just to connect and just to be with our breath. And that's what he was talking about with breath as the bridge. And, as I was trying to practice that myself, I'm just practicing striving to be quiet and striving to connect. He talks about that in this reflection about, when we set a goal or set an activity, even to be quiet and to connect and be quiet and to hibernate within ourselves, all the kind of stuff we're talking about today, we can sometimes fall in, and he was talking about that in the reflection. We can fall into the trap of striving to be quiet. And I was kind of consciously trying to actually, follow his advice, and in an effort, and I use that word in inverted commas because it's not trying to be effortful, it's trying to be effortless in just being with your breath. And he suggested just a focus and of all our attention just simply on the breath and allowing ourselves to, all we need to do, there's nothing else needed but to just, easier said than done, be with the breath. And that's what he was talking about, his breath as a bridge. Because when you're with the breath and present with the breath, your mind can't be anywhere else. You are simply present. You're not in the past, thinking about past actions or past issues or whatever things that are getting into our busy minds, or you're not planning into the future. With the breath and with easeful presence of simply, again, easier said than done, being with your breath in the moment, that's where, according to what he wrote and what I've been trying to practice, is the doorway to the hibernation, sacred hibernation kind of experience. I think that, the poem came out in the poem that, and again, that you shared there, John. So I think that for me is an ongoing piece of work and very powerful piece of practice, is to create less effort and to practice simply, not condition, like stepping out of the striving that we tend to almost conditionally do from doing it all the time, is to step out. And what I've come to kind of term myself now for my own work is step into a no strife zone or a no striving zone through practice of simply allowing myself to be with my breath and notice the sound of breath, be with that, and be present with that as a means to simply enter that, sacred hibernation, I suppose. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to share, and thanks for the topic today. It's really relevant, I think.
Thank you, Seamus. And I love that idea of not striving. And I've always looked at the breath, and I think so many of us here do too. And I always treasured it like that focus because it's something you can do anywhere, no matter the day, the time, you know, it doesn't matter what you're going through. It's something that's so easily accessible and we carry it with us always. And it doesn't cost anything. When you talk about, you know, incorporating different things into your toolbox or into your practice. It's not like you have to go out and, purchase, it's not like running and you have to go out and purchase a new pair of sneakers, or runners. It's the opportunity to just say, okay, I'm just going to shift my awareness or my attention to my breath. And I'm going to use that as whatever it is, an anchor, as a way. And I think that you said sound of your breath, and that's, I know in yoga, that's very vital. I mean, the different audible sounds we come to, and that's one of the first things you learn is to, when you focus on your breathing and you actually make a sound with that breath. In yoga, we call it, there are a number of names of different types, but one is the ujjayi breath. It's just, it gives you something to focus on. And if you focus on that sound and you focus on your breathing, you really don't think of anything else. I mean, your mind does go blank. And yes, thoughts will come in, and then you're like, okay, go back to your breath. You just move it along. It's and it's not getting attached to that, whatever that thought was. That's really, and that's training. It's not, getting pulled away and going down, okay, well, I have to do this and then this and then this, and then your mind's going. And you just keep on redirecting and knowing that your mind will do that because that's what the mind does. And so thank you for sharing. And I love that effortless. I can't say it, but you know what I meant. Mary Jane, did you want to share something before we have Zara join us?
Yeah, just some such beautiful reflection, and I thank you, Seamus, for sharing as well. But yeah, it's just it's such an interesting time. I mean, you know, we think of hibernation, but it's an interesting season, especially here, and it's because it's a feeling of hibernation, but yet at the same time, this is when it becomes an extremely busy or it can become a very busy world because of holidays, seasons approaching. So it's like it's an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it, between hibernation and coming home to yourself and reflecting, and then also a period of time where it can often be very busy and you're pulled out into into the world because of social situations as well. So it's such an interesting juxtaposition thinking about because internally for me, I noticed that within the past a month or so, for me, it seems like my body is calling for stillness. It's calling for taking that time and that sacred space for me. So call it hibernation, call it whatever you wish to call it. That's what my heart's been calling to, and it's been an interesting journey for me because I tend to be, um, keep pressing forward because as in the doing, but really just sensing that this is a time and space for me, um, for taking some sacred pause and really just being. So it's just an interesting juxtaposition that how the season is very busy, can be very busy, depending on your situation, of course. But yet there's that sense of wanting to pull back. But I guess upon that reflection, that's how we know the things that we need to let go of.
Mhm. Good point, Mary Jane. And I agree with you. And I don't only think it's the holiday season. I mean, I think that our society calls for, being out when it's dark, not following those natural rhythms of, maybe getting up earlier because it's light outside, and then, you know, going back inside when it's dark outside. And we don't function like that, here, or I know of most places, people come home far after it's dark outside now.
Yes.
And, as they travel through, from work or wherever, from, duties with families and kids or whatever. So I think that we've set ourselves up for, um, we set ourselves up in a situation which is almost counter to nature. And it's really up to us again, then, I guess, to preserve what we can, um, that nourishes us in that situation, depending on our, all the different things that come into play about who we are and, um, what our tendencies are and what our likes are, where we feel more comfortable, our natural rhythm personally. I'm Zara.
Yes, thanks, Jan. So as I was listening to Seamus talking, hi Seamus, I was listening to Seamus talking about breath work and the struggle to focus and concentrate on the breath. Um, I was thinking about some method that I tried, and I think I've shared it with you once before, Seamus, but I'm quite happy to drop the link again, or anybody else who wants it. So it was at a time when I was extremely overwhelmed. Talking about going out late at night, Jan, I was summoned to pick up a whole bunch of furniture after something like a year and a half. The night before I had to go away to a public speakers academy for like 3 days, I was like, you got an hour to come and pick up what you want and leave. And that was late at night. And as a result, we ended up with a whole bunch of extra stuff, probably for something like 6 months in the house. And I could not even go round these furnitures to vacuum. Like, I think it was creating an extra amount of stress for me. And so it was like build up, build up, build up. And we were all very busy. And it was a massive project to get, to sort out what we didn't need, because we ended up with two or three of everything. And it was like, okay, which one do I want? This one or that one? When you just go, okay, I'll bring it home and I'll decide about it later. Well, that's kind of what happened. But that decide later took 6 months because everything else that was going on in our life. So I met somebody, and at this point, I'm starting to get pretty angry with everybody now. And it was my fault, really. I shouldn't have brought this stuff back. And so I met this coach who started working with breath work with me. And he said, I want you to do this every morning and like report to me about like what's on your mind. So I think I reached a conclusion. I'd literally disconnected from my body at this point. Like, I think I'd created a whole bunch of boundary issues everywhere to the point I didn't know what was what anymore. And this breath work helped me connect with my body and understand what like I was trying to tell myself. And the way that breath work worked, it was like you do take a deep breath for the first time and you focus on the breath, but then he asks you to focus in the space between your two breaths. Mm-hmm. And it goes on from there to then figuring out like how your shoulders feeling going up and down, how your chest is feeling going up and down. And that helps the focus as he's telling you how to do it to have that quiet time. And somehow the mind, body, soul just becomes congruent through that process. Now I'm happy to share that link with anybody who wants it. It's I think they call it somatic work. I'm not very good with stuff like that. But we did a little test before that. He goes like, look at your husband's face. Like, okay, what do you see? Yeah. Before we did this breath work. And afterwards, he goes, now look at it. What do you see? And literally, I couldn't even see the mess in the room after I did that. So it was like, it was bringing back the positivity of what we had between us rather than he hasn't helped me clean this stuff up for 6 months. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense and reminds me of, a few workshops Mary Jane and I have done. And I think what you talk about is basically yoga. When you practice yoga, your mind, body, and spirit become one. And other practices. I mean, my experiences with yoga. Yes, somatic breath work, Al. And basically, the beautiful thing about a practice like that and somatic work itself is you process so much, whether that be emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Your body is like digesting, it's processing. And so what ends up happening is things that you are not able to articulate or communicate, one all of a sudden become very clear. It becomes very obvious to you what's going on because you're in that quiet space. Usually we don't have time to digest anything emotionally, spiritually, or physically because we're just too busy. Or we push it aside or we distract ourselves. And so when we have that quiet time where we're actually fully present, all of a sudden, so much of our life becomes so much more clear. and things that, we get to the root cause of what was bothering us, or, you know, the fact that it really wasn't, your husband or whatever. It was, the clutter, and kind of looked away and realized or recognized what was important. And Mary Jane and I did a beautiful workshop. Is it called Through the Lens, Mary Jane? Where we,
Yes.
yeah, where we actually had people take selfies throughout the workshop, after like movement, after meditation, after being creative. And it was just so interesting how people saw themselves differently throughout the 2 hours. All of a sudden, you're less focused on how you look, and the fact that what your skin looks like that day, and how, oh my God, I have that wrinkle now or whatever. And you start to look so much deeper, and it's beyond the surface. And that sounds like what you were describing, Zara, that you looked beyond the surface, like you actually saw your husband for who he was.
Yeah, and what
And
else I discovered, Jan, through that process was that my body had this really clever mechanism of telling me when someone was crossing my boundary, and I
mhm.
hadn't noticed it. And it would escalate to the point where, like, it would get so severe that I'd end up in hospital. But through that breath work and that somatic and understanding, okay, my body's telling me that, like, I'm not comfortable about this situation right now. And it's actually like pinging a warning here. And actually, I've noticed I get this, on quite a few occasions. So why is my body doing that? And so I started tracking back of all the other times it had happened, the situations around it. And I thought, hang on, my body's telling me this is a boundary issue. It's warning me that this is a boundary issue. And I've been ignoring it up to now. So now I've got that self-awareness. Like now, as soon as that I feel that going, I'm like, okay, right. Okay, Zara, like, what do you need to do about it right now? And it's actually helped me grow in my personal life now and handle different relationships. I think we've covered boundaries before, haven't we? I think our bodies sometimes talk to us and we're not always listening to it. We're just, like you say, we're pushing forward. So slowing down, getting to know ourselves, not just spiritually, emotionally. Sometimes those little, niggly things that go on, like the headaches or whatever, they're trying to tell us something. So
Oh,
it's good to recognize that. Well, thank you for allowing me to share.
you're welcome. Speaking my language, Sarah, of like our body is trying to tell us. Our body's a story. And, if we're quiet enough to listen to it, it has a lot of information. Because if you think about something that happens, like what happens in your body, where does the tension go? Where do you hold? What does your heart do? What does your breath do? Does it become short and erratic? Does your heart like race? Do you feel warm? It has a lot of messages if we're really, usually I say that, my body is talking to me all the time. And if I get sick, it's because I haven't listened. It's because I just, I decide that I'm not going to take the time, and it's telling me that I need to rest. And then if I don't listen, what ends up happening is I get really sick, and the body's like, you're not listening. If you're not listening, I'm going to speak louder.
I'm laughing, Jan, because that sounds very familiar.
No, it's true, right?
Yes,
It's
it
like I'll
is.
sit there. It's like my back will be nagging me, it'll back me, and then all of a sudden, like, all of a sudden, like full blown like spasm, and I'm out for like a week, where it was really giving me these little messages. It was like little, like, little texts that were saying, okay, pay attention. You're ignoring me, and how much of it is really stuff that we just have to slow down, to Seamus's point, you know, and this is the time under the full moon. Like the full moon is the time where you're supposed to complete things. And this is the time of year also. In a number of articles, they talk about, as everybody moves into the last few months of the year, everybody's like, okay, 2026, and what are we going to do? And whatever I'm planning and everything. And they, in a lot of the articles, they were like, close out what you're doing already. Look at it and decide what worked and what didn't work, and reflect on it. And then, so finish up things versus, before you go on to make something new or to create something new.
Yeah, I think this was the basis of Susan David's work as well. Like she's been a huge influence, and lately, I think every call I mentioned Jack Cornfield because they talk, both of them talk about like Susan David, it's emotional agility and begins with awareness and self-awareness and labeling and noticing and being attentive and making sense of the information that's always been presented. Like so, that's the fundamental nature of what Susan David does. And again, very much reinforced by the Buddhist practice then of Jack Cornfield around the rain process, like again, which was, has become a pretty central feature, I suppose, of my own kind of reflection process is that the recognition, the kind of attention to it, acknowledging it, investigating, getting curious, and then, not allowing yourselves to identify or become that emotion, but just getting beneath it. And again, which ties in exactly to just what everything Zara has said and what you've just shared as well around the power of that process of noticing and letting go and being attentive and being caring and compassionate, beginning with ourselves. Because when we're more caring and compassionate and noticing and attending to the information and making sense of that information from within, guess what happens? You become much, it transmits basically to every engagement you have outside. Just like Zara said, you see things differently, through that process. And it's only through experiencing that, I think, that you begin to kind of the penny drops. Ah, okay, now, yeah, this is important. And it's so easy to get stuck in the striving. And then when you experience the effortlessness or the benefit out of effortless non-striving, I think that's what we're talking about here. And I think it's just through experience that you begin to kind of, that's the invitation to every person. Like I certainly work with now. It's to open that door, not just because I say it, it's an invitation to try and experience it for yourself. And then it's through that experience that you are able to, be more attentive and caring and compassionate to yourself. And then the automatic transition of that happens to ripple effect from that space. You engage much differently with every situation outside yourself from the power of that, presence and that connection to self, I suppose, and that attention to, the information that's so important to us that's being presented all the time. So yeah, thanks, Jan. It's all coming together really nicely. Like, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Seamus. And I think one of the things you said is, first of all, I remember like because, at times, especially when I was working full time, I'd go to yoga classes as much as I could. And my friends would say to me if I hadn't gone to class, like, because it became like obvious, like I was a different person when I practiced. And they'd be like, when was the last class you took? Because there would be that shift of like, and so it was like, I think I need to go take a class, or go home and practice because there was a difference in how I went out into the world. And I think part of what you're describing, and I love the way you said it, is you like your clients to experience it because I think we all have experienced it here, so we understand what that feels like. But I think for the majority of people out there, they may not. And I think it is something that you have to experience because it's something that is very hard to describe. It's almost beyond words. And so having someone experience it for themselves is what's going to keep them coming back to it. It wasn't, like for me, it was that feeling I got when I went to yoga class that I was like, oh, I've got it. I want that again. I want that peace. I want that integration. And so I would go and practice again. And that's very hard to describe to people, but that's what draws you back is that it is the experience. And so that's why it's such I love that point because I think it is sometimes beyond our ability to describe in words. And it really is a true experience.
That's so absolutely true. I dropped into a chat just because I didn't want to think of it. It's like I just really love the point that a lot of the stuff that we were looking at was like, this is a time, to reflect. So it's like I like before we can dream new dreams, we must to make room for them and release isn't loss, which I was, yes, it might feel like loss, but it's actually release. It's trust in what's ready to come next. And I really love that perspective because it really is that time for reflection. So I love all the points everybody's sharing. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's just such an interesting thing. I was like one of the articles I remember when we were talking about was I was talking about the moon itself as saying that the moon doesn't pull our emotions, it reflects them back to us. And each phase is a reminder it's natural to have the cycles of both fullness and emptiness. So that also was an interesting perspective. I never thought of it that way, but it's very true.
Absolutely. I think it's a visual demonstration of change, right? It's a very obvious cycle as opposed to something like the seasons, which, usually there are longer periods of time, and depending on the parts of the world that you're in, those shifts can be dramatic or they can be a little bit more, let's say, gentle or not as dramatic, where the moon and its phases is quite obvious. And it's something that everybody experiences. And I think that that's why it was such a vital part of so many different traditions, cultures, um, practices, because it was something that was so obvious to everyone who would take a moment to look up into the sky. Um, became this sign of like, okay, just like the moon has its phases of like, going from a full moon down to down to where there is a new moon, and then vice versa. And one of the things that, Mary Jane and I, and actually Darlene was on with us yesterday for a planning meeting, and there's a website you can go and look at it. It tells you what, like, sort of what qualities you have depending on what phase of the moon you were born under. I can pop the link in the chat. It was actually quite interesting
Yes.
um, to look up, what, and how actually how absolutely true it was. Obviously, as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this would have saved me a lot of time and interest, but in contemplation and introspection if I had known that some of this is just dependent on, when you're born.
Well, yes. I mean, I know there's a lot of people here that are quite in tune with a lot of the other practices and things that sort of nod towards that. But yeah, that was it was very interesting to share to see and yes, it was interesting because I meant earlier I was going to say because we were talking as Zara was talking about breath work, I was going to say beautiful person to connect to if you haven't in our community here is Darlene because that's one of the primary focuses of her practice is healing through breath work. So it's just uh it's just a beautiful thing. And Jan, I have to make a plug now because I'm like,
Of course, go ahead, go for
yeah,
it.
and yeah, well, and sort of on that note, just as a side note to what we're speaking to and to sort of reflection and um Jan and Darlene and I are doing a four-part series. It's we are going to be recording it, so in case it's not time-wise convenient for some, register anyways because it's about rooted in stillness. And so it's it's just coming up at an appropriate time. And Darlene is actually the first person that's going to be starting off the series, and it's about anchoring to breath. And so I think for this group here, especially, and anybody else that you think might be interested, it would be an amazing thing to either join us if you can live or register. And all the registrants will be getting recordings of the sessions anyways. They're just 1 hour sessions at 7 p.m. Eastern. So it starts next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's it. I'm not plugging anymore other than I might pop the link in. But that's it. But yes,
Uh,
shout out to Darlene because she's an amazing practitioner of healing through breath work, as well as the other modalities she has. But yes,
yeah, so yes, thank you, Mary Jane, and it should be wonderful. And Darlene is first, and then we'll move on through all of us. And then the last session will be the three of us together, kind of bringing it all together. So it should be really beautiful. And I think also very timely, moving, as we move into the new year and we move into sort of setting ourselves up for you know, possibility and moving forward and growth. I think this time of sort of quiet reflection and stillness is really important. And so not necessarily planned but obviously sacredly planned as we came up with the topic, you know. So wasn't our intention, but then it all came together. And so Al, please.
Yeah, this first time I heard of a beaver moon. Yeah, so yeah, so the
To be
beaver.
honest, to be honest, I
Hmm.
hadn't heard of it either until I
Oh,
looked it up this past week. And then I was like, oh, I mean, there are other moons I've heard of, Harvest Moon, it has another name. I think it's also called Frost Moon, coming upon
mhm.
winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And that had to do with different sort of Native American cultures or, groups had different names for the moon and probably had to do with the areas they were from. Maybe some that were colder had frost moon. But yeah, I hadn't heard of the Beaver Moon either.
Yeah, because it represents a builder of the mind, body, and soul, and symbolizes creativity, creation, cooperation, persistence, and harmony. The beaver is also a hard worker and will not quit his job until he's done. So it is a industrial animal who's always busy and hardworking. And from for this week, I got a beaver acronym. It's a
Mm,
busy, eagerly, adventuring, victoriously, energetically reaping. Because it's always working hard, so it's reaping the rewards of our hard work. So I put the acronym in the chat. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Al. It's also it's also this true animal demonstration of collaboration. And I think that that's what resonated with both Mary Jane and I upon, our collaboration. And then some of you on here who we, hopefully will collaborate with or who are collaborating together. And I think, that's what a beaver does because it's building within groups, within their kind of tribe of beavers. I mean, it's this community effort, and animals are quite valuable and beautiful demonstrations of this. And so when Mary Jane and I both saw, oh, collaboration, we were like, okay, that seems to really be apropos and applicable here.
thank you for popping that into the chat, Al. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, that's yeah, it's I like it even last night. I know that I think I think with the fifth was when it was supposed to be at its peak, but even last night here at least it looked huge, the moon. It was because it's at the time of the year where the moon is very close to the earth. So it was huge and very bright. And it was such a beautiful thing to see. It was coming back from a yoga class and I thought, wow, look at that. It was so clear and bright and it looked so near, almost like you felt like you could, if you reached high enough, you'd be able to touch it. So it was quite lovely to see.
I agree. I was out with Tonka for our last walk and I was looking up and it was the fifth, but here it was cloudy on the fifth, so you really couldn't see it. And I
Exactly.
noticed it like the fourth and last night. Um, and so I was looking up and, it's when the moon is the closest it's going to be. And then it's also a full moon at that time. And that's what basically a supermoon is. I mean, they say it's actually some sort of illusion that it's larger and closer, because the distance is really not that much that it would be recognizable to the naked eye. Except I disagree because it looked larger to me and it looked much brighter. But, that's just I'm saying. And thank you for the full moon icon, Al. I love that.
I love it too. It's just an amazing phase, and it's just, I guess, the root of everything of what we're talking about now was just really, whether you recognize it as a full moon, the super moon, the beaver moon, but it's just recognizing this as a season, no matter where you are, of coming back into yourself and you know, um, yeah, be take time for being creative and having creative thoughts and dreaming big, because this is the time and space to, as I was saying earlier, about making space for those dreams. So it's really important to do that.
Absolutely. I am curious though, um, for places in the world where it's not, I mean, the Beaver Moon got its name because, as we mentioned, because of the societies that lived, where it's colder weather or whatever. But I'm curious to know in other cultures or in other areas of the world where the climate is actually reversed, so they're coming upon they're into spring coming upon summer, what that might look like for them. I mean, whether it has very different meanings for them. So it's just something, I was thinking about this week. Um, I think we have to honor where we're at, right? And we have to sit there and look to this time as maybe moving into quiet, maybe in those societies where it's kind of like coming upon their summer, that's when they go out, which is, it's a different energy. And as we become so global and so connected electronically, that's a really interesting thing to think about is, coming from basically different places and different times and sort of different energies of, what's happening in nature and maybe taking that into account when we work with people or when we have, friendships or whatever, is honoring where everybody is.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing. You made me curious now. I'm like, I was like looking, it's like I was going, it's like Google, what are these things called in other places? But it's talking about all different names for moons, but it's from the UK actually, but the thing that I found, but it's still referring to the Beaver Moon, so I'm not really sure. Um, yeah, so I'm not really sure why there's why that's the case for. You would think it would be different, but however, it's not. So I will continue the search.
We'll continue the search. I know Al just said its cultural significance is not relevant. I just wonder whether, you know, because so many societies work off of the moon for based on their calendars are based off of the moon.
Yes, that's yeah.
So, I mean, from my understanding, Hinduism, you know, a lot of, the Chinese calendar is based off of the moon. The Jewish calendar is based off of the moon as a lunar calendar. So many sort of ancient societies, it was based off of moon phases versus other ways. And so it's just so interesting since basically they're all working off of that. It might have different significance, but the moon itself was significant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, as you described that, John, I think a lot of it is back to the basics of attention and attunement to your environment. So,
Mhm.
regardless of where you are, I think you're in the right place, and the energy around you, when you're attuned, it's like a receiving antenna. You're just automatic when you are creating the space, like the theme is today, to connect with, and be less, I guess, focused on striving. and more ready and more open to tune your antenna to whatever's going on like within yourself that you might not be so sensitive to when you're forcing and pushing and shoving. I think that maybe is part of the answer to your question is like when we're in that space within ourselves, we're so more attuned to what's going in the broader environment that is the guide to us to invite us to act out of what the environmental energy is guiding us towards, I guess. So, with the northern hemisphere and the moon and the dark evenings and so on, it's the hibernation invitation. And as you said yourself, like in the opposite side of the planet and the lower hemisphere of the planet, it could be that that's a completely different energy that's emerging, from that natural environment. And when we're attuned, no matter where we are, we're attuned to the invitation coming from the broader environment when we're setting us up, so when we're allowing ourselves to be open to, and the antenna is sensitive to whatever the environment is guiding us towards, I guess.
Beautifully said, Seamus. And yes, so true. Is can we go back to um, be one with nature? Um, when I listened to that beautiful podcast by Jane Goodall, she was talking about that. She was like, so much of the world has forgotten that, nature is not outside of us. We are part of nature and we are part of the natural world. And, in that whole idea of we are one kind of thing. And, we belong to nature and nature belongs to us. And I think when we can remember that, one is then we honor the natural cycles of our, where we live and, and we are one with what's happening in nature itself and not trying to, you know, live someplace that's not, where there's no coherence and no cohesiveness. Like there's that disconnect, which is, so much of the, I think so many people are disconnected from the natural world. And I mean, I think that the last statistic I read, I said it was something like I want to say by 2000, maybe like next 10 years, something like 90% of the population will live in urban settings and have no access to nature. I mean, that's pretty, or not immediate access. Like it'll be, they'll have to travel to get to something, maybe a little bit of piece of nature, which was kind of a scary thought to me.
Yeah, it's true. At least I'm probably national parks in the US do it too, but I know there's a lot of the national parks in Canada have where they have committed to being dark sky environments so that you're able to take in the natural you know the space, the stars, the moon, the ambiance of the night sky. So it's quite a beautiful thing to observe for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you live anywhere where you're not, where you're the, light of illumination from buildings or, artificial light maybe is decreased quite a bit. I mean, I think it's very quick that you notice the difference between a night, and the vibrancy of a night sky, which I think is drowned out when when you have so many, let's say, street lights and billboards and buildings and things like that. And so I think that it's really beautiful. Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Mary Jane. The golden supermoon. Yeah, as opposed to some of the others, which look more silvery.
Yes.
And
It,
yeah.
it's good that Al shared that. That was funny because I was about to share that link too, and then I see Al was researching too. See?
Yes. No, love it.
Oh my goodness. What a beautiful reflection today. And it's just such a beautiful space as always that we've I love Al.
Yeah,
Um,
me too, Al. I'm laughing because it's the moon rising.
Yes, exactly. As long as it's not a bad moon rising, but that's a whole other topic. Anyways, go ahead. Jen, do you think this is a good time to move into our meditation?
Yes, and it was very tempting to play Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, you know.
Well, yeah.
I played for Mary Jane on Friday when we were planning.
Oh,
Okay, so we're going to move into our meditation, and thank you, everyone. Um, so this is a heart meditation. This time was, this time is meant to be this sort of connection to the heart. There's this almost like the brightness of the moon would warm and sort of create a sensation like a warming fullness in the heart. So let's begin by settling into a comfortable position, whether you are seated in a chair, on a cushion, or resting your feet gently on the ground. Allow your shoulders to soften and your hands to rest easily in your lap. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale softly through your mouth. If you want to attach a sound to that breath as you breathe in and breathe out, just listen for the sound. Breathe in calm, steady energy, and breathe out any tension or worry from your day. Feel yourself arriving fully in this moment, present, grounded, and open. Now imagine yourself sitting beneath the soft glow of the Beaver Moon. And maybe Al doesn't need to imagine where he is. Light is there. It's light that's not harsh or blinding. It's golden, gentle, and full of wisdom. You feel its presence above you, calm, constant, compassionate, reminding you that just as the moon waxes and wanes, your own emotional tides rise and fall with purpose. Bring your awareness now to the center of your chest, to the heart, the meeting place of breath and spirit. This is your space of compassion, kindness, forgiveness, love. Take a deep breath into this area. And as you exhale, imagine releasing any heaviness you've been carrying, any worry, judgment, grief, self-criticism. Let them dissolve like mist under the moonlight. Now imagine the moonlight gently touching your heart, a luminous glow spreading warmth through your chest. And with each breath, that light expands, radiating through your shoulders, down your arms, and into your hands. You might even notice sensation in your hands or in your body, soft tingling, a sense of openness. And as if your heart is remembering how to breathe freely again. Silently repeat these affirmations or let them simply echo in your awareness. I open my heart to compassion and connection. I forgive myself and others with ease and grace. I am in harmony with the cycles of life. I give and receive love freely. As you breathe in, feel the moon's energy filling your heart with serenity. And as you breathe out, imagine this love extending beyond you, extending out toward the people you care for, the animals you cherish, the earth itself. Now picture a beaver lodge along a quiet frozen pond, sturdy, peaceful, protected. And just like the beaver prepares its home for winter, you too are creating a sanctuary within your own heart, a place where love, forgiveness, and peace can rest and be renewed. Take a few more slow, easy breaths here, feeling the warmth in your chest, the steadiness in your body, the light of the moon gently cradling your spirit. And when you're ready, bring your awareness back to your surroundings. Feel your feet on the floor, the air in the room, the gentle rhythm of your breath. And carry this moonlit calm with you as you move through the day, anchored, open-hearted, and aligned with the rhythms of nature. May your heart stay soft and steady, your spirit light, and your love ever expanding.
Beautiful. And one last short poem before we say our final farewells for today. It's called The Soul Like the Moon. It's by Lala. The soul like the moon is now and always new again. And I have seen the ocean continuously creating. Since I scoured my mind and my body, I too, Lala, am new, each moment new. My teacher told me one thing: live in the soul. When that was so, I began to go naked and dance. Jan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Please connect with Mary Jane and I and everyone else here at this event today. Um, we are a true community, and I know we would love to be there for each other, um, to support in any way. Mary Jane and I, you all know about our Facebook group and LinkedIn group, but feel free to invite people to those groups. We would love to have more who join us. You can also check out all our recordings on our YouTube channel and feel free to share those recordings and like and subscribe if that resonates with you. As Mary Jane mentioned, our four-part series starts this Wednesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So we would love to have you. Let's see what else. Our workshop together, Spirit Born Imaginings, for next workshop is December 7th at 2 p.m., which is Sunday. We also have a survey that we're sending out, or that we'll put the link to, which is asking basically about what you're looking for in 2026. And so we would love to know that too, as we plan, these Friday events and our workshops. Many blessings. Happy supermoon, everybody. We hope you have a blessed and a great weekend. Um, yeah.
Yeah, have a beautiful rest of your day, no matter where you are. And we will pop it in the comments for when I upload the video, etc. But I did pop the link to the survey in the chat as well. We would just like to hear some feedback. It's just to give us some creative ideas as to what people may be looking for. So feel free to um, join that survey if it feels good for you. We would love for you to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, it's very short. It's not very long. So
Yes, you won't be spending hours doing it. It's just to get some ideas. That's all.
exactly, exactly. It's very short and sweet.
I want to know what our community is looking for. And so you're part of our community. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good week, guys, and a good weekend.